How did I start these? Oh, I can't remember. Hello and welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to a Fistful of Dice. No, that's not it. Your main man shoving a fistful of dice down your throat. That's not it either. Hello, this is a same old fistful of dice. That's not it either. Hello, my fellow adventurers. That's not it either. How did I start these things? Welcome to a Fistful of Dice. My name is Matt. Coming back from a long hiatus, which included moving, obviously, new digs, getting a new job, lots of other stuff happening. It's been a crazy few months in my life, a good few months, but crazy one, and I haven't had a lot of time for this little Fistful of Dice channel. But thankfully, I've got my computer all set up again, I've got my recording equipment all set up again, editing software working, sound card fixed, and I'm good to go. I'm hoping to start making videos pretty regularly again, maybe 1 or 2 a week, so we'll see how it goes. The first video I'm going to be doing, as I return here, is going to be another 5 ways video. The other 3 5 ways videos, which I will link down below, are the 5 ways to improve your D&D game, 5 ways to improve as a player, and 5 ways to improve as a role player. This video is going to be 5 ways to improve your campaign, and it's going to be centered on DMs trying to get a little bit more out of the campaigns they're running, making them more fun, more cohesive, and generally just going better, having your efforts as a DM matter more in the game. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So the first tip I'm going to give you is think ahead, don't plan ahead. And what I mean by this is obviously not don't plan at all, but don't set anything in stone, either in your mind or on paper. As you're planning out your campaign, you're going to be tempted to try to come out with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you're going to have this end in your mind that you're going to want to get to. And it's going to kind of close you off a little bit from letting the players do what they want, getting creative, strategizing, going in directions you hadn't really thought about. Now, obviously, it is a good idea to kind of have an end goal in mind, but what this tip is about is more about just being open. Campaigns are living, breathing environments. They're worlds, they're scenarios, they're entire planets that your PCs are exploring, interacting with. So they're prone to change, even drastic change. Acts that your PCs do, or even things that happen around them, the events around them, whether it be war, politics, godlike sort of interference, things like that, just them adventuring, it's bound to shape the world. And in fact, your PC should shape the world in some fashion, especially as they kind of gain in level and notoriety. They should be actively shaping the world around them, and the campaign should sort of start to flow around the PCs rather than the PCs kind of being railroaded in the campaign. Planning too far ahead, planning too concretely will make you prone to railroading, even if you're not trying to do that. Even if you think, well, I'll plan it out this way, and if it goes a different way, that's fine. But planning too concretely, having too vivid of an image in your mind of how you want things to go, whether it be session by session or the campaign as a whole, will close you off to other options to change. Really, what it comes down to is just going with the flow. The campaign has to flow, and the DM has to go with it just as the players do. Remember that the DM is not telling the PCs a story. The DM is directing, but it's everyone is telling the story together. The PCs as well as the DM are telling the story to each other. They're actively building this world and this campaign together. So, yeah, think ahead, but do not plan ahead. Don't plan too concretely. Take it one session at a time, especially if you're a new DM, one session at a time. And I guarantee you, out of those, just planning one session at a time, you're going to get a good campaign out of that. And that kind of leads me to my next tip, which is give the PCs some anchors. And what I mean by anchors is not literal anchors. Don't give them boat anchors, although you could probably use that as an improvised weapon if you have the right feats. But by anchors, I mean familiar things, repeating things, NPCs, locations they can revisit, items they might be carrying, even things like just clear goals and motivations. What these anchors do is they give a sense of continuity within the campaign, especially if you're doing just one session at a time. Having these reoccurring NPCs show up occasionally, or having locations that the PCs can revisit that they know are there, sort of like a base of operations. It makes it feel like a campaign rather than disjointed sessions just kind of crammed together. Other examples of anchors would be like a reoccurring villain. If you have a villain that shows up kind of multiple times throughout the campaign that keeps eluding the party, that would be an example of an anchor. Or, I mentioned an item. Maybe an item that the PCs are carrying is really important and it comes in handy in certain situations. Something they can call upon if they need help. Even things like gods, if they're being directed by, a certain god, or even a powerful wizard who's kind of giving them quests, from time to time. That's an anchor. It's something that they know is there. They can always come back to it if they're unsure about what to do or where to go. And goals as well. Knowing what your goal is in the campaign, your ultimate goal, whether it be get this item, save this person, stop this war, get to this specific location. Things like that make the campaign feel more cohesive, and the PCs feel like they're progressing a little bit more if they have that clear goal. If the PCs are just kind of milling around adventuring, that's fun, but if you're trying to build a campaign that feels worthwhile and that feels meaningful to the PCs, like they're actually doing something worthwhile, try to get some sort of anchor goal in there that they're trying to achieve, even if it's far in the future and not necessarily immediately attainable. Something like that will help a lot in the long run. The third tip I can give you for improving your campaign is to vary the sessions a little bit. Just as every specific one session should be a good mix of tasks, encounters, role-play, combat, the campaign as a whole, the sessions should vary as well. Don't be afraid to have one session be super combat heavy, or another session be super role-play heavy. You don't need each session to be perfectly balanced, so long as the campaign as a whole feels balanced. In fact, it's kind of nice to one week have a ton of combat, and the next week just kind of have a nice some character moments where the characters are talking, interacting with each other. And along those same lines, making sure that the sessions don't feel samey, that every session isn't there's an item that's in this dungeon that you have to go down and get, like every single session, that's a good, kind of blueprint, but you don't want the sessions to feel samey or your players are going to get really bored. Kind of think of it as almost like a TV series almost, where if the episodes are the same time and time again, it's not as fun. They can have the same kind of basic formula where it's like, like a Monster of the Week type thing if you're talking about like X-Files or Supernatural or shows like that. But it's always got a different flavor, got a different tone to it. It varies, and the tasks that the PCs are accomplishing should be varied as well. Tip number 4 would be to create a unique experience. And this doesn't mean create a completely unique world or a completely unique campaign from scratch. But what it does mean is just get creative and imaginative. The thing with D&D players, especially people that have been doing it a long time, is that they're intimately familiar with the tropes of fantasy. And so things like orcs are stupid, goblins are cowardly, dragons are, really old and wise and powerful. they come to expect certain things, almost like they almost stereotype monsters, you know? And so something you can do as a DM is take something that the players think they know, something really familiar, and kind of do something a little different with it. So examples of this would be like, you know, you look through your monster manual or your bestiary, and you find a monster that the PCs know, like, okay, goblins. Everybody knows goblins. What do people know about goblins? Well, they're kind of dumb. They tend to stick together in groups. They're pretty cowardly unless they have a big group or some sort of leader. You know, they're kind of superstitious. Now, what if you took that and you said, okay, what about a band of smart goblins? Some goblins that have either, you know, magically or otherwise become extremely intelligent. Okay, now that's a little different. Now you've got, you know, some goblins that are posing a different kind of threat. You know, they're still not physically stronger, but maybe they're strategizing a little bit. Or maybe, you know, there's somebody leading them that is teaching them different tactics, giving them really nice equipment, stuff like that. A good example in a recent campaign that I was playing in, my buddy Darren, who was DMing, we had a session where a ship pulls into the harbor and it's completely empty. And we go on board the ship. Soon enough, we find out the ship is actually alive. It's a giant mimic. Now, most of the time when you think of a mimic, you think of a treasure chest or a door or something like that. But Darren had kind of taken the idea of the mimic and done something a little different with it, because she hadn't really thought about what if there was a mimic that could become a building or a ship, you know, something like that. That's something a little different, and it's both familiar and new, which is a good mix of things. Another example is like to create unique characters and cultures for your players to interact with. Not just monsters, but, you know, societies, NPCs, things like this. What if there was a society of extremely warlike, barbaric elves? Or like a commune of half-orc pacifist monks? You know, things that you don't necessarily think of when you immediately think of elves or half-orcs. You know, they're not the tropes of these fantasy creatures, you know. So kind of think about that and try to create a unique experience for your players that will keep them guessing and engaged. Tip number 5 is involve your players. I kind of touched on this a little bit in the first tip, but with this, you really want to pursue feedback with your players. And I've said this before in other videos. I think I mentioned it in the Improve Your D&D game. Like, not enough DMs ask for feedback from their players. I don't think it really crosses their mind to, even after a session, just say, did everybody have fun? Or what did you guys think about that? What was your favorite part? What would you guys like to do next session? Going off of that, you have to pay attention to the mood at the table. You know, if players are really enjoying talking in character and kind of strategizing, and, you know, you have this thing planned, but they're really having a good time doing something else, sit back as a DM and realize that they're having fun doing what they're doing, and it'll, you know, whatever you have planned, it'll happen eventually, or it won't, and that's fine. You know, a good example is like, you have a big dungeon planned, and the players are like, oh, well, can we go stop at the shops or something? And you go, well, sure. So they head to the shops, and they end up getting into a conversation with each other about each other's past, or, you know, one character asks another character, so where are you from? And he kind of talks about his city. You know, this is the stuff that players remember, is these cool interactions in character where they're learning about each other and learning about their own characters as they're kind of improvising this kind of stuff. So that's the time as a DM to kind of sit back and let the players run the show a little bit. Just remember that this is a huge cliche, but the destination is not as important as the journey. The journey should be your priority, not the destination. Your priority should not be, I need to get the PCs here so that X or Y happens. It's, I need to make sure the players are having fun along the way. That is top priority as a DM. And, you know, don't be afraid to, as you're planning a campaign or prepping for a session, ask the players, what do you guys want to do next session? Or what would you like to see out of this campaign? What kind of mood would you like? Do you want a lot of combat? Do you want it to kind of be dark? Do you want it to be high magic, low magic? You know, what kind of society do you want to sort of move about in? Do you want this to be super feudal, primitive? Do you want it to be kind of advanced? Do you want there to be guns? things like that. Getting a good feel for what the players want to do and what they think their characters would kind of thrive in and be fun to play. So this is just kind of some stuff to think about here. And I'm hoping that these tips will help you kind of craft a campaign a little bit easier and a little bit simpler. These tips are definitely good for new DMs who kind of are embarking on their own campaigns and don't quite know where to start or don't quite know what to include, or what to think about. Campaigns can be extremely daunting, especially if you're looking at a long, epic campaign. Another tip I would give here, just a quick tip, is to don't be afraid to run short campaigns. If you're kind of daunted by the prospect of running a campaign that runs for a year or two, why don't you plan out like a 5 to 10 session campaign that will run a few months, and kind of try to plan out an arc for yourself a little bit, always keeping in mind that it might change, and try that out instead of trying to build an entire campaign that's going to span years and years, because those can happen. But for me personally, I like shorter campaigns that take up a few months to a year to complete. That's just my personal preference, and I find that it's easier to run for a DM, especially a new DM. So anyway, guys, that's going to be it for me. Keep an eye out for more videos in the future, and I will see you guys later. So thanks for watching. Cheers, guys. Happy gaming, all.